Abby A.C. Ham, and I'll be performing Biggest Blunders in the Bible by A.C. Ham. And now, from the alley behind a prestigious Hollywood studio, Biggest Blunders in the Bible. And here's your host, Sal Lastname! As you certainly know, I'm Sal Lastname, and I'm here to tell you the biggest blunders in the Bible. For blunder one, I'd like to start with some deep biblical history. God had a family so large they could have filled an entire Where's Waldo page by themselves. Now, God intended for his family to be holy, set apart, not like other girls. And he loved his family so much that he freed them from slavery in Egypt and began leading them towards their promised land. However, the Israelites got bored, and this guy decides to start complaining. This guy says, "This is taking forever. We should have stayed in Egypt. We should totally complain about this." After this guy complains, Obadiah complains, then Jedediah, then Jeremiah. And once the Ayahs are complaining, it becomes a fad. And soon, so many Israelites are whining, the place becomes a winery. God, like any good father, has to discipline his children. So he puts them in a 40-year timeout. They were stuck like a one-legged duck in water, going in circles. All because this guy decided to ignore the Lord's promise and think about the meh things they had back in Egypt. Don't be like this guy. Now think about what you've done. On to blunder two. God's people needed a king. And after an intense season of Israel's next best king, God chose David. David was as perfect as a person could get. He had good looks, good heart, and was a former lion tamer. However, David's love life was boring. Probably because he had an awful sense of humor. I mean, the guy loved limericks and didn't get sarcasm. He did, however, have his eye on someone, quite literally. This girl, Bathsheba, was prone to spending time outdoors, and David had a good pair of binoculars. However, Bathsheba was married, gasp! Unsure what to do with this problem, David asked his bros for advice when one of them, this guy, said, "You should just kill the husband." You might remember me saying that David was not good with sarcasm. So he put Uriah on the front lines. Poor Uriah ended up with a boo-boo too big to be fixed. And God, once again, had to discipline his child. David's family fell under a plague of tragedy. The family got sick. The eldest died. And they lost the ability to play an agreeable game of Uno. All because this guy had a sarcasm issue. Finally, blunder three. The worst blunder in the Bible. Jesus had 12 disciples who spent their day at his feet as he explained who God was and how he had come not to end Roman rule, but to give them freedom, salvation, second life. Judas was one of his disciples and not a fan of this message. He had been expecting a warrior king who would come, lay waste to the Romans, and bring them freedom. When he finally understood that his dreams weren't coming true, he was furious. And no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get his anger out in his therapy-mandated journal. And there was this guy, this Pharisee, who offered him 30 pieces of silver in exchange for helping them arrest Jesus. Judas took the money and betrayed Jesus, who went on to die on the cross. And Judas was racked with guilt. But if he paid more attention to Jesus' teaching, he would have realized that God isn't vengeful. He doesn't hold grudges. He's quick to compassion and he offers salvation. Despite the fact that Israelites complained, God kept them as his chosen people. And even years later, when they turned away from him and they worshipped idols, God offered them salvation nonetheless. Despite the fact that David stole Uriah's wife, God told him that his descendant would be the Messiah, the Savior of the world. And when that same Messiah knew that Judas would betray him, he told him about grace and compassion and how both were freely his. Salvation isn't earned if you've done enough good, or lost if you've done enough bad. It's given freely to everyone, even this guy.